So lecture 7-8, we're going to start with you need stuff to stay alive. You need things like macronutrients. What are some examples of macronutrients? Carbohydrates. What else? Lipids and protein. Good. All right. Are there any questions about how to get carbs, lipids, proteins, or what you use them for? Did you guys find those utilizations and sources? Is there any that you couldn't find? No? You found everything? We're all here? Yeah? It's all directly from the book. Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about the energy that's available in those macronutrients. So right here, carbs give you 4.1 kilocalories per gram. Proteins give you 4.1 kilocalories per gram. And fats give you 9.5 kilocalories per gram. So from chemistry, hopefully you guys learned a little bit about calories. The word calorie spelled with a lowercase c is the amount of heat required to raise water by a certain temperature. I don't know who came up with that. But if you have a calorie spelled with a capital C, it is 1,000 times of the calorie with a little c. Is that okay? So that means the problem is when you read like the nutritional facts on food, when it says like 200 calories, that's a misnomer. That should have been capital C, which means it should have been 1,000 of the little calories. So technically it should say kilocalories on there, or it definitely should say calories with a capital C. Okay? So that means if you are eating carbs, for every gram of carbohydrates you eat, you get 4.1 kilocalories, which is actually a pretty small amount considering fats gives you 9.5. And since calories is the measurement of energy, which one gives you more energy? Fats, right? So technically, if you are an athlete and you're running a marathon, should you just like eat butter? Because butter would have like all the kilocalories you need, right? And then you could just keep running forever because all that energy, right? Doesn't that sound yummy too? What if it was on popcorn? Better? Yeah, okay. The problem is fats have this really weird structure. This isn't a fat molecule, this is just randomly put together. You know what I'm saying. When you eat fats, the problem is your body's like, how do I use this? What is going on here? It has to figure out where to break up the molecule, where would it break to spend or to get more energy out of it. So it's a little too complicated, and so typically what your body does is when it sees something like this, a fat molecule versus something simple like a protein, it'll be like, wow, proteins are a lot easier to break up. I'm gonna use this one first, okay? This one's easy, I'll just do that. There's some energy, do this, there's some energy. Whereas a fat, it's like, well, now that we got all the energy we need from the protein, we'll just save this for another day, okay? And then we'll store that fat for another day, okay? Because it's just too much work. So proteins and carbs are easiest to break up. It'll break those up first. So there's this measurement called the BMR. Have you guys heard of BMI? Yeah. It's totally different, completely different actually. BMR stands for basal metabolic rate. So right now, as you are sitting, and last period you were sitting, and the period before that, maybe standing, and the period before that, maybe sitting, and then you go home and you're probably gonna maybe lay down, switch it up a little bit, okay? And you don't do any sports, you can actually kind of calculate about how much energy you just use the whole day. Okay? But if you do sports, there's another way to calculate that. So I'm actually going to have you guys do that. Based on a normal day of sitting, walking to the next class, sitting, walking to the next class, going home, not doing sports, you can calculate your BMR using this equation. So if you have a calculator, go ahead and pull that out. If you have your cell phones, you can't use it. So that means that's about how many calories you spend just sitting around doing nothing. Doesn't that sound amazing? Who has 1,500? So if you have 1,400, that means that's how much energy you spend. That means that's how much energy you get to eat every day. Right? If you're spending 1,500, so if you drive from here to LA, you need a tank of gas, then you need to buy a tank of gas beforehand. So if you need to spend 1,400 calories, you gotta buy 1,400 calories worth of fries to fuel your entire day, right? Yeah, so So that's how many calories you're supposed to eat. Unless you do sports. If you do sports, you have to multiply your number. Alright, so what happens if you don't intake as many calories as you're supposed to? Like, for example, you're dieting or you're too busy to get food or something like that?
Or like, let's say you just woke up this morning and you just didn't eat all day.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Per day?
Yeah. Yes. Alright, so this is a pretty simple idea, but let's just put it out there. This is that number you just got. Okay? This is the number that you actually eat during the day. So let's say you woke up late, you're running, you forgot to eat lunch, you don't have your wallet, and the only time you get to eat is dinner time. And that number of calories is less than how much you just calculated. That would result in losing weight. Because your body needs that energy. Because you're going to spend it regardless. And so if you're not eating it, where is your body going to get the energy from? If you're starving, what happens to you? Your body starts eating itself. It starts breaking down your muscles first. And then once it's done with all the muscles, it starts eating away at the fat, the stored energy. So if you imagine someone right now, someone who's starving to death, what do they look like? They look skinny. They look really like they're wasting away, really bony, because their body is going to start breaking down the proteins. It's got to find the energy somewhere. If you're not going to feed it, it'll find its own way. Okay. Conversely, if you take in more calories than you should be, then that's when you start gaining weight. And it's kind of cool if they have kind of like a calculation for this. If you have an excess of 3,500 kilocalories, that's about equivalent to 1 pound of fat. So I'm not saying one day. Like if I eat extra 500 calories today, and then an extra 500 tomorrow, and then an extra 500 the next day, once it accumulates to about 3,500, I could technically have gained 1 pound of fat. It's kind of cool. The only way to get rid of that is by making your caloric output greater so that you can lose the weight. That kind of makes sense though, right? If you want to lose weight, you start exercising, you use more calories than you actually take in. Okay. However, if you are considering going on a diet or if you're considering bulking and eating more food, you do want to be careful because this is like the recommended amount of calories you should be intaking based on your body weight. So this one doesn't account for like age or height or anything. So this one's a little inaccurate. But if you do the math here, you'll notice the number is probably not the same as what you calculated earlier. This is like a baseline, basically. Like this is where you want to keep it at about. All right, and then you've probably heard of the BMI table. Has anybody ever actually figured out what their BMI was? No? So all you gotta do, find out how tall you are and how much you weigh, and it'll tell you if you're underweight, overweight, or obese, or normal. But does that make sense, though? Like, based on your height and your weight, what if you're like a wrestler who eats lots and lots and lots of protein, but you're short? And if you end up over here, does that mean you're fat? All right. So something to keep in mind, the definition of overweight versus obese. Obesity actually refers to if you have an excessive amount of fat. Overweight, you might be at a heavier weight class, doesn't necessarily mean you have a lot of fat. Okay? So people who use that BMI table to determine, oh, this means that this person is fat versus this person is skinny, that doesn't make any sense. Because this table doesn't tell you how much body fat you're made of. Okay? So this table actually doesn't make sense. All right? It's kind of like this machine here, the fat loss monitor. Have you guys seen these before? Have you tried these? They're at the like gyms and stuff. So all you gotta do is punch in your height, your weight, your age, and what sex you are, and it'll tell you in your body what percentage of your body is made up of fat. Why the face, Nicole? Not everybody's the same. That doesn't even make sense. Me holding onto this is gonna tell me how much fat I'm made of. Have you guys seen that thing where the guy's like, oh, I'm not fat, I'm big boned. And then there's like a skeleton. So that is actually kind of a legitimate argument. Some people's bones are denser. Some people have more muscle. And so it's not really fair to just plug in your height, weight, and age, and it'll tell you how much percent body fat you have. This doesn't really make sense, okay? Because it doesn't actually measure the percentage of fat. It's just kind of calculating, like based on that information, what percentage of fat on average would people have. So this maybe doesn't really make sense. That one's not too accurate either. There is a slightly more accurate way to measure body fat. Have you guys seen these calipers before? No. Well, this particular brand is called Fatometer, which is kind of terrible. But so you can buy these on like Amazon or like drugstores or whatever. eBay is like a couple bucks, and it's kind of cool. But you go to a website, or you can actually figure out how to do the math yourself if you know how. But you go to a website like this here, and it'll tell you, okay, well, if you're going to do this method, the caliper method number 4, you would measure the amount of fat at the abdominal region, thigh region, tricep, and suprailiac region. And so if you've never seen people use this before, what you do is you pinch the person in that area, and once you pinch that person, you measure how much of the fat is there. Okay, so once you pinch the amount of fat, then on the fatometer, I don't think that's the real name, on the caliper, it tells you there's a number, like millimeters, and then you plug that millimeter number in. And then this will actually do the math for you. Okay? And so it's a little more accurate. The only problem is, who would this not work out very well for, that pinching method? Old people, because what's wrong with old people? Their skin doesn't really hold on too well, right? Who else would that not work for? Huh? Did you say babies? Pinching babies, like, your cheeks are fat. Have you guys heard of those people who like gain a lot of weight and then they lose all that weight? They have a lot of like excess skin, and so technically if you're pinching skin, then it's like already there, but then they just lost all the fat, so it doesn't really make sense. So this might not be foolproof either. Okay. Ryan, do you have a question?
Why do people use the BMI scale then?
It's fast and easy, and it gives you like a general idea of where you should be at, but it's not accurate. It doesn't tell you like what percentage body fat you actually have. There's no questions about lecture 7. I'm going to clarify some things from 8. You might want to jot this down somewhere. So I've been asking students, what's the difference between organic and inorganic besides one is more expensive? And a lot of people have been saying organic means natural, but technically an example of a mineral would be like iron, magnesium, calcium. Those are things that are found naturally in the environment. So maybe the word natural is not the best definition. So another way to define organic is something that's made by living things. And inorganic is also found in nature, but it's not made by living things. So thanks to everyday English, we have a tendency to think organic is better, organic's better, we should pay more for organic. In this class, you want to be careful, though. Just because something is inorganic doesn't mean it's bad. If you don't have minerals, you could potentially die, too. Okay? So both are very important. You have your macronutrients, your lipids, carbs, proteins, your vitamins, and your minerals, all necessary. Okay? There are 2 classes. Yes?
You know how you said you have to sometimes take like substances with vitamins to break them down?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you have to do that with minerals too? Like, are they easy to break down?
They're not broken down, but getting them incorporated into whatever it is you need to get incorporated to would require cooperation from other things. So, for example, in your red blood cells, you have to have iron, but to get the iron into the red blood cells are going to require your cells to do a couple of other steps. Yeah. All right, so there's 2 classes of vitamins, water-soluble versus fat-soluble, and this is something you should note. Water-soluble vitamins are very difficult to store. You can't store water-soluble vitamins. You cannot store water-soluble vitamins. So if you took chemistry, what does the word soluble mean? To dissolve. So your body is made up of a lot of water. So every time those vitamins hit water, what happens? It dissolves. So if it dissolves as soon as it hits water, how's it going to be stored? Not in water, but your body's made up of water. So there are some vitamins you just can't store in your body. And that's why you can't just eat carrots once a month and then be like, yeah, I got enough carrots for the whole month. I got a cup of milk this month, I'm good. Next month, maybe if it's not expired yet. Right? This is why you have to drink it constantly, or you have to eat things constantly with every meal, or else every time you intake it, it dissolves. You can't use it again later, so you have to just keep intaking it. Are there any questions about that? So why would people have a deficiency? If they don't have enough, why would they not have enough is a question. Their body doesn't absorb it, it's not in their diet, or Your liver doesn't store it. So this in the notes, it's a little misleading. You might want to change this right here to reasons why you might have a vitamin deficiency. So one reason why, it's because you have a low intake. Another reason, because of storage issues. Another reason, because of failure to absorb. So why might you have a low intake? You might choose to. Like those people who wake up in the morning and they're just like, I'm going to be a vegan today. I'm not going to eat any more meat or dairy products or eggs or anything. Anybody ever have those days? No, right? Some people do though, or vegetarians. They have this moment where they're like, I'm just not going to eat meat anymore. I'm finally going to do it. And when they do that, they cut out a lot of the necessary vitamins or minerals. And unless they do the research, unless they find out, okay, well, I'm cutting out proteins from my meat, so I have to start eating soy to replace that. If they don't make that connection, their body starts giving out on them. So if you've ever met someone who went vegan in the beginning, they look kind of terrible. Like their hair is falling out, their skin starts breaking out, they get really tired, they look really tired, and basically the body's like, well, you're not giving me proteins, I'm going to find it from somewhere else then, I'm going to start breaking down your muscles, okay? So people have to be very careful. If you're going to start dieting, if you take this vitamin out, where are you going to replace it? How will you replace it? Right? Or what might be another reason why someone has a poor diet, besides choosing to? All right, Harley, why might someone have a poor diet?
If they don't have like access to certain foods that they need.
And why might they not have access to certain foods?
They live in a country where it's not available for them.
Yeah, there you go. A lot of countries have a huge vitamin A deficiencies, and their children literally start going blind because they don't have enough vitamin A. Because if you live in a desert country, like, how are you going to grow your crops? Or if you live on a small country, where will you raise these meats that have your vitamins? Okay, some people don't choose to; they just have no option. Sometimes you go to Costco. And at Costco, you buy that Costco pack of gummy bites. Does anybody take those? Gummy bites, delicious, amazing, good for you. However, just because you eat the entire tub of gummy bites doesn't mean your body's going to absorb it all. And if it doesn't absorb it all, it'll actually just send it all back out, either in the form of urine or diarrhea, and that's why you don't eat tubs of gummy bites. My friend did it once. She threw up. Another reason why you might be eating all your gummy bites, but your body doesn't actually want to store it. Unfortunately, if you don't have a very good liver, it can't do its job. And that means you'll just have to constantly find another source. And then I think that is it. I have a list of like the most common minerals in your body. A majority of the minerals in your body are calcium and phosphorus. And where does your body store calcium and phosphorus? Your bones and in your teeth.